Queen Elizabeth II of England died on Thursday afternoon. She was the longest reigning British monarch with over 70 years on the British throne. And she wasn't just the Queen of England. She was also the head of state of 15 other Commonwealth states, including Australia, Canada, and New Zealand. Her eldest son, Prince Charles, has automatically assumed the British throne. Let's take a look at how things will unfold in the near future. First up, let's look at the details of what will happen now in terms of succession to the throne. There's no lag between one monarch passing to the other assuming the throne. Charles, Prince of Wales, became the king as soon as Queen Elizabeth II passed away. But there are some formalities that do need to be carried out. The Accession Council is a ceremonial body responsible for proclaiming the next monarch. They will meet at St. James Palace in London to announce Charles as the next King of England. It consists of various members of the British government and monarchy, including members of the House of Lords and even High Commissioners of Commonwealth realms. Charles will then take the oath known as the Accession Declaration. This is the oath that unites the churches of England and Scotland. This proclamation is read out from a balcony at St. James, as well as several locations in the United Kingdom and around the Commonwealth. Members of the two houses of the British Parliament will also be called in. Both the House of Lords and the House of Commons will then take an oath of allegiance to Charles as the new king. Commonwealth leaders are also expected to attend. This includes Australian Minister Anthony Albanese. They will speak in honor of the late Queen and welcome the new king. At Westminster Abbey and St. Paul's Cathedral, bells are expected to toll, and the customary gun salutes will take place all through England, Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland. Following up on that, Prince Charles is now King Charles III. Doing as his mother did, he decided to go by his given name instead of choosing what is known as a regnal name. He will now be known as King Charles III. Historically speaking, many monarchs take up a regnal name as they ascend to the throne of king or queen. In fact, his grandfather and the late Queen Elizabeth's father chose to be called King George VI. His name was actually Albert Frederick Arthur George. Queen Elizabeth II was one of the rare royals who decided to keep her name when she became queen in 1952. The queen's full name was Elizabeth Alexandra Mary Windsor, and she also went by Lilibet. But that was one reserved for those closest to her. The practice of taking on regnal names is actually an ancient practice that's even found in Assyrian and Egyptian royalty. There are some title changes for the man who's next in line to the throne. Prince William is now the Duke of Cambridge and Cornwall, as opposed to just Cambridge. Princess Kate is the Duchess, of course, of Cambridge and Cornwall. Following up on that is the question of whether Camilla will be queen. Well, for starters, she is certainly no longer the Duchess of Cornwall, but she isn't exactly going to be called queen either. Camilla will be styled as the queen consort. The traditional position of the spouse of a ruling king or queen is royal consort. In most cases, the king's wives have taken on the title. When Charles and Camilla got married in a conservative civil ceremony in 2005, she technically became the Princess of Wales. This was, of course, Diana's title. But instead, she became the Duchess of Cornwall. It was considered inappropriate to give her a title so closely associated with Charles' first wife, and given how beloved Diana was. This had been a contentious issue since the early days of their marriage. What would Camilla's title be? For years, palace officials said that it would be Princess Consort instead of Queen Consort when Charles became king. Even back in 2010, when Charles was asked if Camilla would be the Queen of England, in an interview, he wasn't quite sure of what her title would be. But this year, in February, Queen Elizabeth II ended all the speculation herself. She explicitly said it was her sincere wish that Camilla becomes Queen Consort. Now, let's take a look at when the Queen's funeral will be. It's going to be more than a week before her funeral at Westminster Abbey in London. Her body is currently in northeast Scotland at her estate in Balmoral. It will be then taken to the nearby city of Aberdeen. After this, the body will be taken to South Edinburgh, the Scottish capital, on the royal train. A special guard of honor made of members of the British Armed Forces and emergency services personnel will be stationed along the route. This is part of what's called Operation Unicorn, Scotland's plan for the Queen's death. Next up, what will happen at the royal funeral? The Queen's body will lie at Holyrood House. This is the official royal residence in Scotland. before traveling to Edinburgh's historic Royal Mile to St. Giles Cathedral. Here, people will have a chance to pay their respects to their long-serving monarch. Special ceremonies will be held in the Scottish capital before her remains are put back onto the royal train, this time for the journey south to London. Upon arrival in London, she will lie in the throne room of Buckingham Palace. She will be taken to Westminster Hall, where a short service will be held. This is when the official period of 4 days of lying in state will begin. During this time, the coffin will be guarded by the British military. Members of the public and VIPs will be able to pay their last respects during these mourning days, as will the new king. At the end of this period, she will be taken a short distance away to Westminster Abbey, as the chimes of Big Ben ring out across the city of London. It is expected that the entire country will come to a halt and crowds will flood the streets for the Queen's last journey. Millions will also be able to watch on big screens across the country. Up next, where will the British monarch be buried? The 96-year-old will be laid to rest in the King George VI Memorial Chapel at St. George's Chapel in Windsor. The body of her husband, who died in April last year, will be moved out from the royal vault. This is because both she and Prince Philip may be buried side by side. Her father, King George VI, and the Queen Mother are also buried in the same place. The ashes of her sister, Princess Margaret, are also kept there. There's a distance of 37 kilometers between Westminster Abbey and Windsor Castle. The entire stretch is expected to be crowded by people waiting to catch a glimpse of the Queen's coffin. Coming up, when will Charles officially be crowned king? Well, actually, the coronation of King Charles III could happen more than a year later. So why? This is to allow for an appropriate period to mourn the late Queen. But he's still very much the king. The coronation is just a formal ceremony in which the former Prince of Wales will be physically crowned king. Since 1066, all major royal events have taken place at Westminster Abbey. This includes various royal weddings and funerals. Similarly, Charles' coronation will also take place here. The coronation of the king will be presided over by the Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby. But his grandfather, King George VI, only had to wait for 5 months before his coronation on the 12th of May 1937. That's because his brother, Edward VIII, abdicated in December 1936, and the original ceremony was planned for him. But the time between the passing of their father, King George V, and the coronation of King George VI was 15 months. So it's safe to say that it will be at least a year before we see Charles wear the crown. But he was the first child to be present for his parents' coronation. He was 4 years old when Elizabeth II had hers. His younger sister, Princess Anne, was considered too young to attend. That said, like his mother's, Charles's coronation will be broadcast live around the world. It will be the first coronation of a British monarch to be shown in full color. And lastly, here's what else we know about the Queen's funeral. The latest reports suggest that her state funeral will take place on Monday the 19th of September. There may be a day off in the UK that day, as it would be an official day of national mourning. The funeral will be attended by 2,000 guests invited to Westminster Abbey. The general public might be able to catch a glimpse of the coffin as it travels from Westminster Abbey to Windsor Castle. And the big question, how much will the funeral cost? The Queen Mother's funeral cost more than £5 million, the majority of which was security expenses. But the Duke of Edinburgh's funeral last year cost a lot less. But that was because it had been scaled back due to the pandemic. But this time, we're talking about the Queen herself. While there's no number, it's safe to say it's going to be expensive. That's a wrap for this video. Where were you when you first found out that Queen had died? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.